Okay, so I love the Golden Girls, and I bought the series entirely on DVD about a year ago, and I had started watching it up until about maybe halfway through the second season. Then I just sort of stopped. But lately, the past few weeks, I started rewatching them, and I picked up where I left off. But there's an episode that made me feel so bad for Rose. Oh, by the way, talk about dressing for the occasion. Rose, I might as well introduce the characters right now, since in case you clicked on this video and you do not know who any of the characters are. I don't think you need to know anything much about the show in order to understand why this episode pissed me off. But Rose, Dorothy, Blanche, and Sophia, these guys are going to be relevant for today. But anyway, for those that care, I'm still going to be watching this series after essentially all the bullshit I'm going to talk about today. Yeah, I just felt like this episode that I'm going to talk about was just so out of character, which, by the way, is called Love Rose, and it's the 35th episode in the entire series and the 10th episode of season 2. If you see me looking like darting off, I wrote down essentially an entire script. I don't really do that, especially for videos that are about fiction, like where I'm just kind of speaking from the dome. But this, I literally had to get everything out of my mind, or almost everything, and put it on a physical form, because I was just so bothered by how they handled like the characters. Anyway, let's get into it, okay? Enough pretense into the freaking video. So the episode starts off with Rose lamenting to Dorothy and Blanche about not having anyone to go out with, since seemingly everyone, including Sophia, has an active love life. Because of that, they end up making an advert in the newspaper's personal section, which, for those that don't know, it's just like a section in the newspaper where you can advertise whatever. I'm assuming that's like related to your personal life. Could be wrong. Care to explain, anyone who was alive during that time where it was hot and poppin', to just put something in the personal section? Sounds like just kind of like a booty calling on like social media nowadays, but could be wrong. Regardless, this leads to Blanche responding to that same advert that they ended up creating. So Blanche, I don't know if Rose was the one that created it, or Blanche and Dorothy ended up creating it for Rose, but she was like with it, like okay with it. Regardless, Blanche responds to the same advert as someone named Isaac Newton, which I was like, okay, ooh, she'll never get that. And because she's Rose, she really never got that. So yeah, Blanche ends up writing several letters to Rose pretending to be a citrus farmer named Isaac Newton. This goes on eventually until Rose wants to meet him, and then Blanche freaks out. Also, haven't spoke about Dorothy's role specifically. She was initially against it completely, but then she decided to go along with it, which might be worse than what Blanche is doing. But anyway, Rose ends up looking for this guy in a phone book, and since there's only one listing for an Isaac Newton in Miami, she calls the contact and demands that he comes, and does not give him a no for an answer. She literally like calls, demands, and then just like slams the phone. Yeah, by the way, the show takes place in Miami, Florida. Not important though for what's gonna happen later, because Blanche gets wind, she farts. No, because Blanche catches wind that Rose wants to meet him, she writes one final letter to him that he's going to catch on, and then that's when she calls Isaac Newton, a random ass person in like the fucking phone book that she finds. But whatever. Moving on, and then also wrapping up like the episode, because I don't want this to be like just a summary of the episode. I like want to talk about what's actually grinding my gears about it. But anyway, Rose and Isaac end up hitting it off. Like, he comes to the house that they live at, they hit it off. He's portrayed as like a stereotypical weird guy, but he's pretty kind, all things considered. Like, he's pretty, though a little bit of an odd, he's a fine individual. He's also kind of neurodivergent coded, and it's Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But like I think he's a chill dude despite being portrayed as a loser. Yeah. Moving on. At the reception slash dance or whatever, Blanche and Dorothy reveal to Rose that it was indeed them who had been writing those letters. Rose, clearly thinking somebody had a genuine interest in her, is crushed and scurries off to the bathroom at this event. Now we're at the part that I want to talk about, that I have been like I've been just like grinding my fucking like every single joint in my body just like during this scene. Rose is essentially pouring her heart out when they go to the restroom and they're like attempting to like get her out of the restroom. Yeah, there's only like two restrooms and they go over there to, console her and, be like, "Oh my god, we're so sorry. We're so sorry." But during this scene, Rose is pouring her heart out. She's saying, "Oh, like I was so excited that somebody finally cared about me in a way that, is romantic, but also wants to hear about the gripes of my job every now and then, the little things in life that I care about. Someone was finally interested in me like that, and to find out that it's you guys, and you've been doing this for a while, likely for a while, like I'm crushed, I'm devastated." Point of view of Rose. Blanche and Dorothy's response can essentially be summed up to, well, what they wrote in those letters was not entirely a lie, because what they wrote about was essentially their feelings towards Rose, which, okay, sure. And I know this is how sitcoms usually work. There's an issue, there's events happening related to that issue, and then there's some kind of resolution. But the resolution in this episode sucks bolas, sucks nalgas, sucks ass. Like, it's not this entire thing that I just said with how like them talking in the restroom is maybe a minute long, a minute and a half max, and then it ends off with Rose coming out and giving them a hug, and then like, the laugh track is like, ah, and then the show ends like after Blanche makes like a joke about like getting with Dorothy's date because, oops, I didn't know, Blanche, she gets around, like whatever. Another thing though that really bothers me is that they cross so many boundaries that they hadn't in previous episodes. Like they, kind of all get on each other's nerves throughout the series. That's just, by virtue of them being themselves, that's just kind of what happens. Ooh, excuse me. But they don't go, like, this is the first episode where I was like, whoa, this feels like some emotional and mental manipulation kind of thing going on. Like, it was just so, I mean, I think it's in character for Blanche to do this, but maybe like 1 or 2 letters, 3 max, and it doesn't last nearly as long as how it's depicted in the show, because when I say they do it for a long time, they reference that they wrote several letters and that at least a couple weeks went by where they were just kind of like being, I don't know, like matchmaker, but the matchmaker is them making up a character for Rose to fall in love with that isn't real. Like, I just felt like a lot of boundaries were crossed, and I don't know who I feel is more in like the wrong. I don't know if it's Blanche because she's the one that literally made it and continued it to fruition, or Dorothy because she essentially enabled Blanche and was just a bystander the entire time, even though there were times throughout the episode where she was like, "Oh, forgive me, like we need to beg for Rose's forgiveness, Blanche, let's just go." But yeah, I think that's all I really have to. I mean, I could say the same thing over and over again. I was just so surprised how they were handled. Like, dog. I don't think that they would go that far, but I don't know. It is. I don't want to say it is what it is because it's so. But anyway. And, to reiterate, I'm still going to watch the rest of this show. Besides this fuck ass episode, I still love the main cast of characters very dearly. And speaking of main cast, where was Miss Sophia? the entire time? Well, she kind of had her own side plot going on with some British old guy trying to be a gold digger and take her money that he thought she had, but it's revealed at the very end, a little before they have the resolution, like, that they're going through with their issue. That, oh, she doesn't have money, and then the guy just goes. And also, he's supposed to be British, but he sounds like if a cartoon character was attempting to be British, if that makes sense. Like, if a cartoon character was doing a really poor British accent, but it's so poor that it sounds like a whole different accent entirely. It was just like, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, this episode sucked. Hashtag Team Rose, and yeah, if you made it this far, you get 5 cool points and 5 gold stars. And with that, I will maybe see you again on this big wide web. Bye.